Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call the public hearing on fiscal year 2021-2022 tentative millage rate and tentative budget for the South Florida Water Management District to order. Let's see. I'd like to do a roll call first. We've got some folks on the phone or on Zoom and some folks in person. Mr. Bergeron? Are you there?
I'm here,
Great.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Butler?
Here.
Mr. Martinez? We'll come back to Mr. Martinez. Ms. Meads?
I'm here. Thank you.
Colonel Roman's sitting next to me. You could say you're here.
I'm here.
Mr. Steinley?
I am here.
Mr. Olepich?
Here.
Thank you. And Vice Chair Wagner will not be able to join us today. Colonel Roman, would you like to lead us in the pledge?
Certainly.
The United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome, everyone, to this public hearing on the tentative millage and budget for fiscal year 2021-22. For those board members who are participating via Zoom, if you'd like to speak, please unmute yourself and state your name. I can't see you if you raise your hand, so just speak up. Members of the public who wish to address the board may use the raise your hand feature in Zoom. If members of the public are having any trouble and need help, staff is available to assist you. You can call 561-686-8800 and press 6, or go to the website sfwmd.gov and click the Ask Us button at the top of the page. If you're using a phone and you'd like to comment, please press *9 to raise your hand and *6 to mute or unmute. We're going to take public comment first from those who are here in person and submitted a comment card, followed by those who wish to raise their hands on Zoom. We'll go to item number 3 now. Rosie, are there any changes to the agenda?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Are there any comment cards submitted?
No, Mr. Chairman.
How about public comment?
I'm sorry. We do have one raised hand. It's Brad Cornell. Mr. Cornell, you're recognized to speak.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. This is Brad Cornell. I'm here on behalf of Audubon, Florida, and I appreciate the opportunity to address your budget hearing today, your tentative budget hearing and the millage rate. So I'd like to share a couple of thoughts with you today from Audubon's perspective. Ad valorem funds are essential for water management districts to carry out their core functions of water supply, flood control, water quality and ecological restoration, as well as conservation land management. Ad valorem funds used towards projects that benefit these ecosystems are often leveraged against funding provided by other state and federal sources, increasing the total investment in critical water resource projects. I think you all recognize that. In July of 2021, this board voted unanimously in favor of continuing the millage rate rather than rolling it back. Audubon is grateful for that show of leadership. However, since July's meeting, there has been a reconsideration of this continuation, and today we're hearing that the millage rate will instead be rolled back. We encourage this board to reconsider this rate as proposed. Continuing the millage rate will increase available funding for the district into the vicinity of about $14 million. As more people move into the district is expected to provide the same level of service, and it needs funding to do so. The district undertakes significant ecosystem restoration projects and has even more on the way, which is great. It is simply good fiscal policy to continue the millage rate in order to support these meaningful efforts. We are very grateful to Governor DeSantis for continuing to prioritize Everglades restoration and for providing funding to advance these projects. However, the district undertakes important water resource projects that go beyond Everglades restoration. Continuation of the millage rate will encourage sustained funding from the district that is separate and apart from state or federal allocations for ecosystem restoration projects. This diversification of revenue is essential in these uncertain times. For these reasons, we encourage you to continue the millage rate as originally proposed in July. The protection of Florida's incredible water resources should not be compromised. Thank you very much for the opportunity to address this.
Thank you, Mr. Cornell. Mr. Chairman, there are no additional raised hands.
Thank you, Rosie, and thank you, Mr. Cornell, for your comments. I'd now like to ask Ms. Candida Heater, the Division Director for Administrative Services, to take us through agenda items 5 through 11.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, board members. This is the first of 2 public hearings required by Chapter 200 Florida Statute Trim to adopt millage rates and a budget for fiscal year 2021-2022. The second hearing is scheduled to be here at headquarters in the B1 Building Auditorium and will also be available on Zoom Tuesday, September 21st at 5:15 p.m. The Zoom link may be found on our district web at www.sfwmd.gov. We do have IT staff on standby for this meeting for technical assistance if a member from the public encounters technical issues. This evening, staff will request action on 7 resolutions. 4 resolutions for the adoption of tentative fiscal year 2021-2022 millage rates, 2 resolutions for the adoption of the Everglades Agricultural Privilege Tax rolls, 1 for the Everglades Agricultural Area and 1 for the C-139 Basin. 1 resolution adopting the fiscal year 2021-2022 tentative budget. There are strict statutory guidelines that must be followed in adopting tentative millage rates and budget. The first substantive issue to be discussed is the percentage increase in the millage rates over the rolled back rates necessary to fund the budget, if any, and the specific purposes for which ad valorem tax revenues are being increased. With the tentative rates being proposed this evening at the rolled back millage rate, there is no increase in ad valorem taxes to be discussed pursuant to the statute. The tentative millage rates are as follows. District-wide, 0.1061 mil at the rolled back rate. Big Cypress Basin, 0.1116 mil at the rolled back rate. Okeechobee Basin, 0.1146 mil at the rolled back rate. Everglades Construction Project, 0.0365 mil at the rolled back rate, for a total combined Big Cypress Basin millage rate of 0.2177 mil in the Big Cypress Basin, Collier, and a small portion of mainland Monroe. These rates represent $21.77 per $100,000 of taxable value. For a total combined Okeechobee Basin millage rate of 0.2572 mil in the Okeechobee Basin, 15 of 16 counties. These rates represent $25.72 per $100,000 of taxable value. Mr. Chairman, I turn the meeting back over to you prior to considering the next 4 resolutions on the millage rates.
Thank you, Ms. Heater. Are there any board members' comments or questions before we move on to consider the resolutions? Hearing none, board members, we're going to be voting on each resolution separately. There are going to be 7 altogether. Ms. Heater is going to take us through, I think, the first 4. I'll perform a roll call vote on each resolution as it comes up. Ms. Heater, you can proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The staff considerations related to the 4 tentative millage rates outlined on the 2 on this slide and 2 on the following slides. And each, as you mentioned, must be voted on separately. Staff presents for consideration Resolution 2020-21-0917 to adopt tentative district-wide millage rate.
Thank you. Are there any board comments or questions on this? If not, I'd love a motion in a second.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion to adopt Resolution 2021-0917 to adopt a district-wide tentative millage rate of .1061 mil.
I have a motion.
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a number of seconds. If there's any further discussion by board, if there's not any further discussion by board, I'll call that question. Mr. Bergeron?
Yes.
Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Mr. Martinez, you on?
Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Meads?
Yes.
Colonel Roman?
Yes.
Mr. Steinle?
Yes.
Mr. Lipich?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. That passes unanimously. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I could just jump in real quickly.
Yeah.
I think for the record, the clerk probably needs to have a second by name. I think the first one I heard was Mr. Steinle. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Steinle seconded.
Thank you. Staff presents for consideration Resolution 2020-21-0918 for consideration to adopt tentative millage rate for the Big Cypress Basin.
Are there any board member comments or questions on this one? If not, I'd ask for a motion and a second to adopt the tentative millage rate for Big Cypress Basin as per Resolution 2021-918.
Mr. Chair, I'll
Ron
make the
Bergeron, I'll
motion.
make the motion.
Okay, I've missed Colonel Roman making the motion. Mr. Bergeron, will you second?
I will second that.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second. Is there further board discussion? Hearing none, I'll call that question. Mr. Bergeron?
Yes.
Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Mr. Martinez?
Yes.
Ms. Meads?
Yes.
Colonel Roman?
Yes.
Mr. Steinle?
Yes.
Mr. Lipich?
Yes.
And I will vote yes. That passes unanimously.
Thank you. Staff presents for consideration Resolution 2020-21-0919 to adopt tentative Okeechobee Basin millage rate.
Thank you. Are there any board member comments or questions on that? If not, I'll ask for a motion to second and adopt the tentative millage rate for the Okeechobee Basin as per Resolution 2021-0919.
Mr. Chair,
I'll make a motion. I'm sorry, it's Jackie Thurlow Lippish. I'm happy to make the second.
go ahead, Jackie. You might as well make the motion.
Mr. Lipich, will you move that?
Yes, I will. Thank you.
Mr. Lipich makes the motion.
I'll second.
Colonel Roman seconds. Is there further discussion? Hearing none, we'll call that question. Mr. Bergeron?
Yes.
Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Mr. Martinez?
Yes.
Ms. Meads?
Yes.
Colonel Roman?
Yes.
Mr. Steinle?
Yes.
Mr. Lipich?
Yes.
And I will vote yes. That passes unanimously as well.
Thank you. Staff presents for consideration Resolution 2021-0920, adopt tentative Everglades construction project millage rate.
Thanks. Is there any board member comments or questions on that one? I'll ask for a motion and a second to adopt the tentative millage rate for the Everglades construction project within the Okeechobee Basin as per Resolution 2021-0920.
Mr. Chairman, Butler, I'll move Resolution 2021-0920.
Mr. Butler moves.
I'll second.
Colonel Roman seconds. Is there further discussion by the board? Hearing none, we'll call that question. Mr. Bergeron?
Thanks, Troy.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is Brad Cornell, and I'm here on behalf of Audubon Western Everglades and Audubon, Florida. And I appreciate the opportunity to address you on this tentative budget tonight. I just want to be brief and address one part of the budget, which is Conservation Collier. Audubon fully...
Thank you. Mr. Bergeron?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Mr. Martinez?
Yes.
Ms. Meads?
Yes.
Colonel Roman?
Yes.
Mr. Steinle?
Yes.
Ms. Lipich?
Yes.
And I will vote yes on that. That passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you. This portion of the presentation pertains to the agricultural privilege tax, which is non-ad valorem per acre tax on actively farmed parcels located within the Everglades Agricultural Area, EAA, and the C-139 Basin in Palm Beach and Hendry counties. The EAA spans across both Palm Beach and Hendry counties, while the C-139 basin is located solely in Hendry County. Beginning with the agricultural privilege tax for the Everglades agricultural area, staff requests for consideration that the governing board take action to adopt a resolution that approves previous vegetable acreage disaster tax deferrals from 1996, 2000, and 2016, and approves and certifies the Everglades agricultural area tax roll. No new vegetable deferral applications were received. The current tax rate is $25 per acre pursuant to Section 373-4592 Florida statute. The rate to be applied to the deferral acres is $25. For the 445,057.41 acres at $25 per acre, total revenue generates taxes totaling $11,126,435. Staff applies a budgeted discount of $445,057 to account for early payment discount and budget trends for total budget revenue for the EAA of $10,681,378. Mr. Chairman, I turn the meeting back over to you prior to considering the adoption of the EAA resolution.
Thank you, Ms. Heater. Are there any board members with questions or comments? I'd ask for a motion and a second to approve the Everglades Agricultural Privilege Tax Resolution number 2021-0921.
This is Ron Bergeron. I'll make the motion.
Mr. Bergeron moves.
Butler, second.
Mr. Butler seconds. Is there further discussion by the board? Hearing none, I'll call that question. Mr. Bergeron.
Yes.
Mr. Butler.
Yes.
Mr. Martinez.
Yes.
Ms. Meads.
Yes.
Colonel Roman.
Yes.
Mr. Steinle.
Yes.
Mr. Olipich.
Yes.
And I will vote yes. That passes unanimously.
Thank you. For the agricultural privilege tax for the C-139 basin, staff requests for consideration that the governing board take action to adopt a resolution that grants vegetable acreage applications, if any, and approves and certifies the C-139 basin tax roll. No deferral vegetable applications were received. The agricultural privilege tax rate per acre is $1.80, is assessed on the total taxable value acres in the C-139 basin of 126,343.66, which yields a total tax of $227,419. Staff applies a budgeted discount of $9,097 to account for early payment discount and budget trends. The total 2021-2022 budgeted revenue from the C-139 basin is estimated at $218,322. Mr. Chairman, I turn the meeting back over to you prior to considering the adoption of the C-139 resolution.
Thank you, Ms. Heater. Are there any board members who have questions or comments? If not, I'll ask for a motion and a second to approve the C-139 Agricultural Privilege Tax Resolution number 2021-0922.
Mr. Chairman, Butler, I move to approve the resolution 2021-0922.
Mr. Butler moves.
I'll second.
I have a second by Colonel Roman. Is there further discussion by the board? Hearing none, I'll call that question. Mr. Bergeron.
Yes.
Mr. Butler.
Yes.
Mr. Martinez.
Yes.
Ms. Meads.
Yes.
Colonel Roman.
Yes.
Mr. Steinle.
Yes.
Mr. Olipich.
Yes.
And I'm going to vote yes. That passes unanimously.
Thank you. This portion of the presentation pertains to the fiscal year 2021-2022 tentative budget amount of $1,150,346,196 to be considered tonight for both revenue and expenditures. The pie chart to the left illustrates the revenues, ad valorem and state sources making up 80% of revenue, and fund balance 13%. The pie chart to the right illustrates the projected expenses by program. 89% of the budget continues to support restoration and operations and maintenance. There are two deadlines for legislative comments. September 5th, General Legislative Committee and Subcommittee comments were due. Staff received no comments. September 14th, the Executive Office of the Governor and the Legislative Budget Commission comments are due. Mr. Chairman, I turn the meeting back over to you prior to considering the tentative budget adoption resolution.
Thank you, Ms. Heater. Are there any board comments or questions? If not, I'll ask for a motion to second and adopt the tentative budget as per resolution number 2021-0923.
I'll make the motion, Mr.
This is Charlie
Chairman.
Martinez. I'll make a motion.
Mr. Martinez moves.
I'll second.
Colonel Roman seconds. Further discussion by the board? Hearing none, I'll call that question. Mr. Bergeron?
Yes.
Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Mr. Martinez?
Yes.
Ms. Meads?
Yes.
Colonel Roman?
Yes.
Mr. Steinle?
Yes.
Mr. Olipich?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes, and that passes unanimously as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I want to thank you, the board, for all of your direction and support for staff to get us to this point. We do have one more meeting to get us to the final. I also want to thank the executive team for their direction throughout the year. And then, of course, staff. Staff are they're the backbone behind making this happen. So I want to thank them.
Well, thank you, Ms. Heater. And I look out in the room and I see the budget staff sitting there, and I want to say thank you very much on behalf of the governing board. I personally do know how hard it is and how much work you put in, and I can't thank you enough for making this all work. Our next and final budget hearing is going to be held on Tuesday, September 21st at 5:15. And if there's nothing further from the board, this meeting is adjourned.